tour of Harvest for limited edition wines. I'm Bree Stock, co-founder and owner, winemaker, master of wine here in the Willamette Valley, and I am standing inside Vineyard, and we have rain delays, so we are out checking on fruit in the vineyard and just seeing where things are at and starting to plan the logistics of harvest. A lot of harvest is logistics and cleaning. But right now we're in our Pinot Blanc block and just looking through this fruit right now. We've got a little bit of sunburn happening on these Pinot Blanc clusters. And this happened during the last heat wave that we had, or the last two heat waves, where temperatures got up to around 100 degrees and just sort of stayed there for about 4 or 5 days and then dropped back down. And some of these berries that were lesser developed started to get sunburn, and over time they just start to shrivel and dry up. And this won't really be any problem in the winemaking process because they're going to be hard and have no bitterness, and our destemmer, which is very impressive, will usually just leave them on the cluster and pull off the other berries if we want to, or if we're doing a whole cluster press of the Pinot Blanc, we can either sort them out or just press them and nothing is going to come out of them, no bitterness, because it's already just dried out fruit. So that is sunburn, one of the vineyard hazards that we see in the changing climate in the Willamette Valley. We are just at the beginning of harvest here in the Willamette Valley. We're in the Yamhill Carlton AVA, and we are sitting in our Pinot Blanc block. And so this here is Pinot Blanc. As you can see, quite long clusters, smaller berries. This is a dry farmed vineyard site. Pinot Blanc is a really important grape variety here in the Willamette Valley from a historical perspective. It was one of the first Alsatian varieties that was planted here in the 1960s. And it really made up the backbone of the white wine blends here in the Willamette Valley. So we see Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Gewürztraminer, all of the classic Alsatian varieties being planted, and beautiful old vines here from 1965 until really about the 2000s. And since then, there really hasn't been too many plantings of Pinot Blanc or those other varieties in the Willamette Valley, since it's been really focused on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay production from sort of the mid 2000s out. We use Pinot Blanc in our blends, primarily our Blanc Crush, which is a blend of Chardonnay, Aligoté, Pinot Blanc, and this year maybe some Sauvignon Blanc. So maybe some Sauvignon Blanc stories very soon. I am Bree Stock, Master of Wine, and we are going to chat a little today about regenerative farming practices. So what you can see here in this vineyard is that the rows are quite wide. Older vine farming practices, no irrigation, so dry farming techniques. And what that means also is that these vines have pretty deep roots, and you can see from the vine rows here that we have a no-till vineyard, which means that no tractors come through here with a tiller and tear up the soils. And so what that does is capture carbon in the soil. And for those reasons, we need to be really picky about what cover crops we plant in the mid rows and under the vines. We want to have cover crops that are going to grow early in the season, helping the vine and the vineyard capture nitrogen and give nutrition to the vines. But through the growing season, as the climate gets hotter and drier through that growing season into July and August, that these native grasses and non-invasive grasses are going to die off naturally, allowing the vines access to water in these Willackenzie sandy soils when they really need it in the hot late months of the year, so that they can finish ripening fully the grapes on the vine and maintain healthy canopies. So we have yarrow, we have rye, we have a series of different grasses, and more people here in the Willamette Valley who are practicing regenerative farming techniques are really looking at grasses that will remain low, non-competitive to the vine, and will die off in the late summer. And it's a really exciting subject to start to explore here in the valley as we're seeking out more of the native natural grasses that are found here in this region. So as you can see here, Pinot Gris is not a white grape variety, even though it's typically made into a white wine in many regions. This grape variety is actually a mutation of Pinot Noir, and it has really beautiful mauve skin. And this was one of the first varieties that was planted here in the Willamette Valley in 1965. And sadly, the economics of Pinot Noir mean that it hasn't been planted in recent years. And so these beautiful old vines are really the last of the variety here in the valley. And did you know that Oregon was the first place in the United States to commercialize Pinot Gris? True fact. But these grapes, we really love working with the old vines of these selections, and many producers now are really working with the variety as its authentic self. And what I mean by that is we're fermenting it on its skins and treating it more like the red-skinned variety that it is. And so having that skin fermentation gives a light red color. These wines are often called Ramato if they're from Italy. I guess you could call them an orange wine, but they're Pinot Gris, as it should be fermented. And it has a lot of flavor in its skins. So it has similar flavors to Pinot Noir, so strawberry, sweet baking spices, but it also has a really fun tannin profile that has a little bit of cumin and taco truck spice to it as well, which is great for a food wine. So seek out those orange and light red styles of Pinot Gris and enjoy the variety as its authentic self. Hi, I'm Bree Stock, Master of Wine, here in Oregon's Willamette Valley with Pinot Noir, the region's most planted grape variety, and really it makes up about 90 to 95% of the red grapes that are planted here in the Willamette Valley, so really dominates the industry here. This clonal selection of Pinot Noir is known as the Wädenswil selection. It was sourced by Dr. Harry Olmo, a professor at UC Davis in the late 50s, who brought this clonal selection along with many others back from Burgundy and the town of Wädenswil in Switzerland. So a very ancient variety. Pinot Noir has many mutations, but this selection, along with two other selections, really established the region in the Willamette Valley for Pinot Noir. So these are known now as the heirloom selections in the Willamette Valley. They make up Wädenswil, Pommard, which is from Pommard in Burgundy, and the Curie selection, which we believe is a Pinot Noir clone that has come from Alsace in France. These three selections, the heirloom selections, were all the varieties or clonal selections of Pinot Noir that were planted from 1965 until the mid-1980s, when the Dijon selections were brought into Oregon through Oregon State University. So the Dijon selections are 115, 777, 667, 114, and those Burgundian selections that are sort of more known as sugar accumulators. And so we really love to work with, at limited edition wines, the heirloom selections. And these heirloom selections really make up the most of the old vines here in the region. And so that's another reason why we really enjoy working with these old heirloom selections. But like anything, diversity is important. And so When we look at planting more vineyards, we look at planting a selection of various clones that we can get, whatever we can get our hands on. So we look at Mount Eden Pinot Noir, Calera Pinot Noir, and several other Dijon or Burgundian selections, 828, that have all been brought in since the 1980s. So Pinot Noir is a very complex and fascinating subject, but it is one of the oldest grape varieties known to man on the planet, and it mutates very easily. So it has a lot of different clones.